Hello, my name is Mohan Kelkar, and in this particular video, I want to discuss the recently concluded COP27 conference. Conference of Parties, or COP meetings, are held normally every year under the auspices of United Nations to assess the progress in dealing with climate change. The first meeting was held in Berlin in 1995, and the latest meeting, COP27, was held in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. The meeting started with a big bang, with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres issuing a stern warning. We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. There were a lot of people who were listening to this warning. About 127 heads of states attended the meeting, in addition to 40,000 delegates from various countries. Members of press and media were available, large number of NGOs, United Nations representatives, many city representatives, and heads of businesses also attended the meeting. So, what was accomplished after 2 weeks of meeting? One thing which was accomplished was new loss and damage fund to help low and middle income countries to cover the cost of climate change impacts. This is supposedly to help developing countries such as Pakistan, which just recently experienced a large flood. There were no firm commitments on how much will go into this fund and who will contribute, no clear delineation as to how a country will become eligible and apply for such a fund. Call me skeptic, but this fund probably will not be established. There is always a difference between weather-related event and an event which happens because of the climate change. Most of the developing countries will claim any particular damage to their country as a climate-related event, and the people who are administrating this fund will simply say this is weather-related event, therefore particular fund will be denied. I think this will be a cesspool where lawyers will litigate with each other about whether a particular event is caused by the weather or the climate change, and nothing will be resolved very easily, and it is very unlikely that a country will actually benefit from such funding mechanism. The other thing which was accomplished was call for accelerated development of low emission energy systems. Read it as natural gas. Ukraine war has created shortage of natural gas in Europe, so there was a lot of interest in European countries developing a relationship with some of the African nations who have abundant supply of natural gas. This will clearly require building LNG terminals so the gas can be transported through LNG to European nations. Although most of the European leaders insisted that these are short-term fixes and will not detract them from long-term commitments, the reality is that the LNG terminals will take several years to build and many more years to operate. So if indeed such investment is made, and which many African countries are clamoring for because of their self-interest, it is quite possible that the natural gas from African countries will be supplying the European countries for 30 to 40 years. After 2 weeks of talking, what was not discussed is equally important. There was no mention of emission peaking in 2025, which was the statement made in Paris COP. There was no mention of phase down of coal, which was mentioned in the Glasgow COP just last year. There was no clear commitment to phase out all the fossil fuels, and it is increasingly likely that Paris COP commitment to limit the increase in the temperature of the earth to about 1.5 degrees is becoming increasingly difficult, and most of the media is accepting that reality. Over the last 25 years, as these COP meetings have taken place, the fossil fuel consumption has increased by about 60%, with a small dip in 2020 because of the COVID. The demand for fossil fuel has rebounded, and 2022 will be the year where there will be a maximum demand of fossil fuel consumption. Even in terms of percentage increase in the fossil fuel consumption, since the first meeting in 1995 was held, there is always a positive increase in the fossil fuel consumption. Over the last 10 years, we have averaged about 1% increase per year in fossil fuel consumption. So although there has been a lot of discussion of reducing the fossil fuel consumption, the actual fuel consumption always is showing a positive increase in the overall consumption. There are some interesting facts about the CO2 footprint of the delegates. 40,000 people attended the meeting, averaging about 8,000 miles on an airplane. An airplane consumes about 0.02 gallons of jet fuel per passenger per mile, and 1 gallon of fuel generates about 20 pounds of CO2. In addition, about 400 private jets landed in Sharm el Sheikh, emitting about 9,000 tons of CO2. Combined, the total CO2 emission over the 2 weeks was closer to 77,000 tons of CO2. This is equivalent to 2 million citizens of African citizens over the same period. If indeed the people who are attending these COP meetings are worried about the CO2 footprint, maybe next time they could attend the meeting on Zoom or Teams and save this type of CO2 footprint. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you like the presentation, please subscribe to my channel.